I think Michael Schumacher was with him on the night out, and he was then like in qualifying the next day, and DC had too much and was sitting there, and we had to like frame this bucket out of shot. I just think it's easier now to not drink much. Like I still have a beer with my mates, but it's a 0% beer. And I honestly don't see the difference.
Yeah.
But then I feel the difference the next day when I'm not hungover and wrecked. And I've had my years of drinking and having fun. It was great. My years on kids TV and Formula One. Like you can't not party when you're working in Formula One, right?
Can I ask, is kids TV a boozy atmosphere?
Yeah, man. It was a boozy atmosphere. It was actually a really fascinating place because it's the most, it's cutthroat. Maybe not the right word. The most ambitious, like place I've ever worked because everyone wants to be the one that escapes kids TV. Like the minute you get there, then there's like a pecking order. If you're on the CBBC channel, then you're not loved as much as the people on BBC Two. And they're not loved as much as the people on BBC One. Yeah. And when you get your rota and you're like, yes, I've got a weekend shift on BBC Two, I must have impressed someone. And you're on constant like 1 year contracts. And every time you go in your boss's office, there's like a stack of VHSs of like, and he's got a thing saying like marked, potential future presenters. And you see this fucking massive stack of VHS tapes. And like you're constantly like scrapping for your future and wondering what's going to happen. And I remember once when I worked with Holly Willoughby on Fame Academy, and it went really well. And we had this meeting where the senior people came to us and said, right, we'd like to make you an offer. And it will be a long-term contract at Children's BBC. And we will include like a development plan so that you can start developing entertainment shows. And we'd like you to maybe move through the BBC and become like entertainment presenters as a duo together as a partnership. Yeah. And I'm just sitting there thinking, I can't believe it, man. I've come from a little village in Norfolk, failed my A-levels, ended up doing some work experience, landed this show on Fame Academy. It was the CBBC spin-off of Fame Academy. And now, like, every dream has been offered. It included, like, Saturday morning kids telly, which when you're on kids telly is the dream. Mm. And then they finished the meeting. They said, just so you know, this offer isn't open to one or other of you. It's both of you or neither of you.
Yeah.
I was like, well, sign me up now. And then we were working together. I had to wait for ages and ages and ages. And like, it wasn't really being discussed. And I was thinking, why are we not talking about this great offer? And then one day she called me and said, just so you know, I've just signed for ITV to host their Saturday morning kids show. And I was like, it's the end for me. Thankfully it wasn't. But it's like, it's really interesting, that world where you're just constantly wanting to be the next one to get through. It's pretty freaking exhausting.
Yeah, absolutely. And also it's probably a bit like, I imagine boy band members drink as heavy and go as hard as someone in like a heavy metal band because they want to be seen as no, we're a proper band.
Yeah,
like, do you know what I mean?
I bet comedy's the same though, right?
Yeah, well, but there's definitely been that phase. Like, I would say our generation didn't like, but the generation before us, I remember like Johnny Vegas, like such a brilliant comedian. But I remember I was on tour with him. We did like a week of gigs in Nottingham, and he was amazing. And then on the fourth show was just shocking because he'd been up for 3 days. And those 3 gigs were extraordinary, and like everything could happen. Like he's been put in wheelie bins and fucking like all sorts. And then day 3, coughing up blood and shocking.
Because it was too much.
Just because you can't, but if you're going to be that reckless and that kind of nihilistic, it will catch up with you. You can't capture.
See, I've never been there because I've never felt I've had the talent to do that. Do you know what I mean?
Like,
I was too much about on F1. I had a few nights out, but I never really went out.
Oh no,
because I was like, I need to deliver a live TV show tomorrow, and you're like, everyone else can go and party if you're in the production team, or even if you're one of the pundits, like if you're Eddie Jordan or David Coulthard, you're just talking about a world you know. Yeah. So I remember once we interviewed Michael Schumacher, and David had like a bucket between his legs because he was being sick because of the massive night out he'd had the night before. I think Michael Schumacher was with him on the night out, and he was then like in qualifying the next day, and DC had too much and was sitting there, and we had to like frame this bucket out of shot. Whereas I was always like in the hotel room early because I was this kid that had been given this chance from kids TV. And I remember when I got offered the job, I met with them, and they said, we're going to ask you to be the new presenter of Formula One, which I could not believe. They said, we're going to announce it early in 2009, a couple of months before the season starts, at like 10 o'clock on a random Tuesday morning or Thursday morning. And then I couldn't wait for the world to hear, like, I managed to do what we've just talked about, escape kids' telly, like it had actually happened. And then Harriet rang me at 10:30 in tears on the day of the announcement. I said, what's the matter? And she said, I've just been on the internet. Everyone thinks you're going to be shit. And I was like, oh, where did you read that? And do you remember they used to have a 606 message board? So, you know, 606, the radio phone, they used to have like an online version. And it was like a forum. And someone
What was she
like,
doing on 606?
what?
What was she doing on 606?
I think-
Slagging off Spurs.
Yeah, slagging off her husband. So I think she just kind of gone like, oh, I wonder what people are making.
She'd gone down the rabbit hole.
Or maybe been sent it. Someone has maybe
Right.
said, oh, they're saying nasty things about your husband. And someone had just like written the title was something like this. Why would you give why is a kids' TV presenter who looks like Frankenstein been given the job of hosting F1? And I thought, wow, okay. And then it was like just reams of vitriol.
Yeah.
And my boss had said to me, a brilliant guy called Niall, he'd said to me, people will make their minds up about you in 10 seconds in Australia. So you need to deliver in those opening 10 seconds. Des Lynam called presenting sport a high wire act without a safety net. And that's exactly how it felt. You know, your entire umbilical cord is just your earpieces and the monitor, no auto cue, no script unless you've written something the night before, but you don't actually know what's going to happen. So the adrenaline was out of this world. I remember I finished the first race and it was a massive thing for me. I said to David Coulthard, I was like, mate, how about that for an adrenaline rush, man, live television? And he looked at me deadpan and he went, son, I've driven through Eau Rouge wheel to wheel with Michael Schumacher. That wasn't an adrenaline rush.
Yeah.
I'm like, fair enough. We've got different levels of adrenaline here. You know, he needs a little bit more. And then when I left to go to BT Sport, I had a boss and he sat me down about 2 weeks before and he said, how do you feel about the fact BT have spent £1 billion on football rights and it's entirely up to you whether it's successful or not? I was like, wow, thanks, man. So then there was that pressure there as well. So I think I really got to the end of my time at BT, having done. So I started at Children's BBC in 2001 and left BT in 2023. So 22 years. I thought it was 12. It's 22. Got to the end of 22 years and never really never really enjoyed it. Never enjoyed it because I had to deliver.
Yes.
And I'm not sad about that because I don't have regrets about that because I think if I had enjoyed it, I wouldn't be sitting here now. I probably would have left or been, booted off kids' TV or failed at Formula One or been a flop at football. Like that would have been the cost of that. So it is a balanced life, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, no, but it's also, it's like you were sort of saying about high performance. You don't get to enjoy it because you're too busy doing it. Kenny Dalglish said that he was envious of people that could be in the COP because they could watch it, whereas he had to do it.
It's funny though because they're envious of him being on the pitch.
Exactly, but it's just
it has a cost.
Yeah.
To do great stuff has a cost.
Yeah,